now. Good morning at home. I'm going to share the screen so I don't forget. All right. Okay, so good morning. Remember I said to you guys that we would be doing like half of this supply unit over the first couple of days. Then you'll get your study guide going into tomorrow. Did you let that person in? That tardy person? There's a tardy person. Imagine that. We're going to do half of it, the market portion of it, and then we're going to get into the study guide, and then you guys will next week get into cost of production and monopoly guys right here. Don't worry about the tardy person. It's part of the problem. They're just disruptive. Good morning. All right. So we're going to do some work in partners here in a little bit. But before we do that, the notes right here. Again, at home, you're taking down these notes if you are absent today or at some point have been absent. So here we're going to title today, Elasticity of Supply. Okay. And remember, as we've recalibrated and rebooted, we are now suppliers. Okay. We are not consumers. We are suppliers that are concerned about making what? Money, profit. Exactly. Okay. And the potential for profit, again, is what attracts us into the market or attracts us to produce more of what we're producing, right? So, but elasticity, as it is with demand, is a significant portion of the conversation. Demand is how responsive people are to a price change as consumers. And now the same thing with supply. Definition's virtually the same. It is how responsive, let me get this down, suppliers are to a change in price. So if they are very responsive, right, would say if they're responsive, this translates to relatively elastic supply. And if they are not very responsive, this translates to being relatively inelastic with supply. Nod your head if you're good with this. Yeah, makes sense, right? Same concept as before. Nod your head at home if you're good with this. If you're not, don't nod your head. So there's one key thing as it pertains to elasticity of supply. The main factor, I should say, the main factor that affects elasticity of supply. Let's go ahead and write it that way. Main factor impacting elasticity of supply is this: time. Don't forget this. I'll explain as you get it down. Is the main factor impacting the elasticity of supply. The main factor that affects the elasticity of supply is time. And what that means is this. As a supplier, let's just go back to the walnut example. Sound good? So let's say we're suppliers of walnuts, and let's just focus down to just one person. Let's stay with me. I'm a supplier of walnuts, and I see the price of walnuts increasing. Eyes right here when you're ready. Do I want now to produce more walnuts if the price is increased? Hello? Yeah. Yeah, I do, okay? Here's the problem. Can I just overnight produce more walnuts? Like tomorrow I'm going to produce twice as many walnuts. What do I need? I need time to like plant the trees. Their saplings are young. They've got to grow. They got to become fruitful, right? It takes time. Okay, but walnuts are a food, right? They're a product or a good. They're food, agricultural product. It takes more time with something like that. Services are a bit different. Okay, now let's just stay with walnuts for a second. If the price of walnuts decreased, would I want to produce fewer walnuts? I would, and I'd want to stop producing tomorrow, wouldn't I? What's the problem with that? What am I stuck with tomorrow?
A bunch of walnuts.
A bunch of walnut trees. And just because the price has dropped doesn't mean I can just stop producing walnuts. Are you with me? So again, that's an agricultural product, good, what have you. Products and goods are a little tougher to be elastic with, right? So we would say I'm relatively inelastic with my supply of walnuts, agreed? Something that I could be more elastic with would be something like a service. Let's say I provide haircuts, all right? And let's say the price of haircuts increases overnight and I want to now supply more haircuts. What would it take for me to supply more haircuts? If I have like a haircut part, like think like supercuts, what would it take? What's that? A few more people working for me? I could do that pretty quick, couldn't I? What else would I need? What?
Advertising.
Some advertising, could do that relatively quickly. What else? More scissors, more clippers, stay open longer, keep the doors open longer, right? Are those things that I could do pretty much like that within like days? So we would say because the price increase of haircuts and I want to supply more haircuts now, I can. We would say my supply of haircuts would be relatively elastic. But if the price drops of haircuts, people are just like paying less, I can't make as much money. Can't the reverse hold true as well? That is, I'll just let a few people go, or you're working fewer hours, or I'll just not keep the doors open as long. Does that make sense? I can be fairly responsive to a change in price. So this is the last part of our deal here. As it pertains to elasticity of supply and time, again, time being our main factor that impacts or affects elasticity of supply, we're going to say that services tend to be more what? Elastic. And that looks like this. Raise this up a little bit. Okay, services tend to be more elastic. I'm going to draw both of these on the back here in a second, and that'll be ending our notes. Well, what tends to be more inelastic? Goods tend to be more inelastic. You guys with me? Question, comment, sir?
If you have like a stockpile of goods and the price goes down, can't you just not sell them until the price goes up?
I can. So you're saying I have a bunch of inventory and the price drops and I hold on to them? Is that what you're saying? I can do that. And in reality, that's probably what I'm going to do, right? But that's assuming, so you're saying they tend to be more inelastic. You're referring to this, right? So you're challenging that one. Is that correct? Yeah. So if I have a stockpile of goods that tend to, and I want to get rid of them, well, I could hold on to them and sell them for when the price changes. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I could, but what's the problem in the meantime? I'm not making any what? Money. And I've got loss. So unless I can manage that, we just say it's not perfectly inelastic, right? But they tend to be more inelastic. I don't have the same luxury. I don't have the same ability to adjust. You guys agree? I don't have the same ability to change my behavior as price changes, right? So I want to have you guys draw. Do you guys have space at the bottom of your paper still? You don't have to draw both these again. I'm going to draw these again individually, but on a larger screen here. Okay, so we'll step away and actually get a new whiteboard. But you're just going to add to the one you just did. Okay, so I'm going to start with services. Okay. And we use the example of haircuts, right? Haircuts. Haircuts, as it pertains to elasticity, tends to be more what? Elastic in their supply. And you've seen this before, but I'm just going to reiterate it. Why is this a thing? What is it in our behavior changing? That is, let's just say that the price of haircuts was here And this was the relative or respective quantity supplied. And let's say the price of haircuts dropped just even a little bit. We're saying, again, with a relatively insignificant change in price, once you have it, eyes here, with a relatively insignificant change in price, we see a fairly significant change in my what? Behavior as a supplier. That is, I would supply fewer haircuts, or we as a market would supply fewer haircuts. Is it making sense? Okay, so make sure you're getting this down. You can't get the points or the credit in your notes without these two graphs. There's only two of them. Okay, so make sure you get them down. All right, so again, decrease in price, same thing. If the price increased a bit, then I could see a fairly significant change in my behavior or an increase in quantity supplied. All right, and then the last piece here, again, you already have this, but as it pertains to elasticity, and we're considering goods, and we were talking about walnuts. Goods tend to be more what in terms of elasticity? More inelastic, which looks like this. Inelastic as it pertains to supply. So if we saw, the example I gave you was, if we saw the price of walnuts, I hope you're getting this at home, price of walnuts started there, price one, quantity, respective quantity supplied, and the price of walnuts changed drastically. We would see a relatively insignificant change. With a large change in price, we would see a relatively insignificant change in what again? Behavior, quantity supplied, behavior as it pertains to supplier. That is because, again, if the price increases, maybe I have some inventory of walnuts. Obviously, they spoil, right? Inventory, like you were saying, I have some on my shelves. I maybe pump those out, right? Or I try to maybe I expedite. Maybe I have trees that are starting to produce fruit, but I kind of was going to wait and hold off a little bit, you know, and maybe I start to do things that expedite it. And on the backside of it, I also plant some more. It's going to take time, but I begin to adjust, but I can only adjust a little tiny bit, right? If any at all. Because again, if the price increases, I'm stuck with this amount of walnuts and I can't produce more if I wanted to. I make slight adjustments, maybe. And if the price decreased, I can't decrease my quantity supplied or my behavior really at all, because I'm stuck with a whole orchard full of walnut trees. And I can't just say, well, you know what, screw it, this sucks, the price dropped, just cut them all down, light them by firewood now. I mean, in the long run, there might be things like that I could do, but essentially that's not what will happen. Does that make sense? I want to check one more thing real quick. So I want to do one more thing with you. So as it pertains to goods and services, we're comfortable with elasticity, yes? Okay. Last piece. As it pertains to time, back to time again, okay? And elasticity. It's a little quiz for you. Here we go. Yeah. Which let's go and do this. Let's go ahead and do let's do this. Relatively inelastic, as you know. More elastic, as you know. Here's the quiz. And then a quick conversation, then we're done. Which one of these graphs is showing the short run and which one is showing the long run? That is to say, as it pertains to time, what sort of elasticity do we see in the short run? What sort of elasticity do we see in the long run? You started to say it. Inelastic in the what? Okay, what were you going to say? Good.
I was going to say, do you mean like when you say in the long run in the short run, what makes the most amount of money?
No, let's go back to my walnut example. So whether it's a good or a service, we can make changes as what? As time goes on. So as time hasn't gone on yet, or as it hasn't happened, as time hasn't passed yet in the short run, like you said, which one of these would represent the short run, where we can't make a lot of changes? More inelastic. Agreed? So this would represent short run. More inelastic supply curve would be, we would see this in the short run. That is, I can't make a bunch of changes. We already showed that on the last graph, right? Goods tend to be more inelastic in general, right? And services tend to be more elastic, but they both have a time frame where you can make adjustments, right? So as time goes on, whether it's a good or a service, as more time goes on, can't we say we can make more adjustments as a supplier? I can plant more trees. Like, it's the time frame between haircuts and walnut growing is totally different, agreed? But there's still a relative time frame. If I wanted to plant more walnuts because prices went up, I could do that. It's just going to take me some years. If I wanted to supply more haircuts as time went on, yeah, maybe it's like 2 days, I could supply more haircuts if prices went up. So there is a relative time frame. In the short run, we are less responsive, agreed, as suppliers? We can't do as much. Can't supply as many haircuts, I got to wait a couple of days to figure it out. Can't grow as many walnuts, got to wait a few years, right? But as time goes on, I can be more what? Elastic. So we would say in the long run, we tend to see a more elastic supply curve. Hope you got that at home. Have a nice life.